Let's talk about the moments. Some that last just a few seconds, others that unfold over thousands of years, that have completely, and I mean completely, rewritten the face of our planet. You know, it's easy to think of the ground beneath our feet as the one constant thing in our lives, right? It's the solid stage where everything happens. It feels permanent, like it's never gonna change.
But here's the thing. That feeling of stability is probably one of the greatest illusions we live with, because the Earth's surface is anything but fixed. And if you want proof, just look at this. On the left, that's Mount St. Helens before 1980. You know, a picture-perfect, thriving landscape. And on the right, that's the aftermath. The eruption didn't just blow the top off the volcano, it instantly vaporized over 600 square kilometers of forest. It's a really powerful and kind of scary modern reminder of just how fast our world can become completely unrecognizable.
Okay, so first, let's dive into the really dramatic stuff, the geological heavy hitters that can tear up the map in the blink of an eye. Now, as huge as Mount St. Helens was, believe it or not, it doesn't even begin to compare to a supervolcano. We're talking about eruptions so insanely powerful, they don't just create a new landscape. Nope. They can actually trigger a volcanic winter, fundamentally changing the climate for the entire planet. Look at this number. It's almost impossible to wrap your head around. The Toba supereruption in Indonesia blew out 2,800 cubic kilometers of rock and ash. That is enough material to bury entire countries. It was an event so colossal it literally plunged the world into darkness and might have pushed early humanity right to the very brink of extinction. And it's not just volcanoes. Earthquakes do way more than just shake things up. They literally break and move the planet. In 2011, during that massive Tohoku quake, parts of Japan's coastline were permanently shoved 4 meters to the east. Think about that for a second. The actual physical map of Japan had to be redrawn. So that same tectonic power that can shift an entire coastline can also displace an unbelievable amount of water. What do you think happens when all that energy is unleashed in the middle of the ocean? Well, you get a monster like the Storegga Slide tsunami. About 8,000 years ago, a huge underwater landslide off the coast of Norway triggered this thing. It wasn't just a flood. It was like the ocean itself decided to move miles inland, leaving behind marine fossils and saltwater scorched earth where forests used to be. It permanently rewrote the coastline of northern Europe. Okay, but not all transformations are so sudden and violent. In fact, some of the most profound changes to our world come from these slow, relentless forces, sculpting the planet over millennia. For instance, near the end of the last ice age, a giant ice dam that was holding back a massive lake just failed. The megaflood that followed didn't just carve a river path. It stripped away all the soil, all the sediment, everything, right down to the bare bedrock. It created this bizarre, almost alien-looking landscape you can still go see today in Washington state. And if you're trying to grasp just how powerful that flood was, this chart really puts it into perspective. The Amazon is the biggest river in the world today, right? Well, at its peak, the Missoula floods were discharging water at a rate 50 times greater. It's a force of nature on a scale that is just mind-boggling. And speaking of the Ice Age, glaciers are the ultimate remodelers. As they grow, these massive ice sheets, sometimes 3 kilometers thick, act like these giant cosmic bulldozers, just scraping entire continents flat. But then, as they melt and retreat, their meltwater carves out brand new valleys, leaves behind thousands of lakes, and scatters huge boulders hundreds of miles from where they started. They leave behind a completely new world in their wake.
But you know, change isn't always about adding something powerful. Sometimes the biggest changes happen when you take something away. Drought isn't just a lack of water, it's an active force. It can reveal canyons that have been hidden for a century at the bottom of a lake. Or, as some evidence suggests happened with the Mayans, it can transform fertile land into arid scrubs so completely that an entire civilization just collapses.
And then there's something we're all familiar with: wildfires. A huge fire does more than just burn down a forest. It can change the soil itself, making it impossible for the old trees to grow back. So instead, they get replaced by grasses or shrubs. The fire effectively hits the reset button on the entire region's identity. So, why are we looking at all these ancient, massive events? What does it matter to us now? Well, it matters because these same forces are still very much at play, and in some cases, we're actually speeding them up. This is where the past connects directly to our future. The same kinds of droughts that turned ancient lakes into deserts are now threatening our farmlands. The wildfires that used to reset ecosystems are now happening more often and with greater intensity. And the same glacial melt that carved out continents is now raising sea levels, threatening to redraw our coastlines all over again.
So if there's one big thing to take away from all this, it's this. The world you see outside your window, the mountains, the coastlines, it's all just a temporary snapshot, a single frame in a very long movie. Stability is the anomaly. The only real constant on this planet is profound, powerful, and relentless change.
And that brings us to the final critical question. We live on a planet that's always in motion, always remaking itself. And as our climate accelerates these processes, it's no longer a question of if the map will be rewritten. The question is, which of these immense forces will be holding the pen?